2, 1, boom. And we are live. I am joined by colleague, friend, family, mentor, Sports Talk 2319, host of the 101 podcast, Rashad Phillips. Your intro keeps getting longer and longer. You're like Apollo Creed.
You're always trying to redefine yourself, and I don't know, it keeps clicking. So I take that as a compliment. I'm a huge Apollo Creed fan.
I was watching Rocky the other day. It's my all-time favorite movie, the fourth one, when Apollo Creed fights Drago, and they're going over his intro and all his nicknames, and Rocky's like, "Could you add any more names?" And it's like, you keep adding layers and layers and layers to yourself, and it's beyond impressive. So first, how are you? How's the podcast? How's obviously we know how Sports Talk 2319 is. I always have to talk about it on my show. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm fantastic, Max. I mean, I can't complain. I'm always excited to be on your show, be on your platform, just sitting back watching you grow and engage with your social media following is always great to see. A lot of people don't know our story. You came to me, you were like this kid at the NBA game. You had on your book bag and you had your slacks on and your dress shirt. And I'm sitting there with a hoodie and jogging suit, and I'm looking at you just saying, "What you doing, man?" You're like, This is the way. I said, "No, that's not the way. We're gonna have to loosen you up a little bit."
Yep.
You speed things up. You're interviewing Giannis Antetokounmpo. You're interviewing Zach LaVine. You interviewing Trae Young. It's like now your portfolio is starting to grow, and it's awesome to watch you just become more comfortable in your skin, and really create a strong, pure following. So I'm excited.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we definitely, it's going to be a movie one day, I promise you. There's going to be like behind the scenes clips and pictures, and I learn from you every day. And so one of the first things I want to pick your brain before we dive into all these different topics is I've compared you to the iPhone. I said you're the iPhone of scouting, and really not even just scouting, the iPhone of sports at this point. You're ahead of the curve, and you see things. You're not scared to speak on things before it's popular. And so at first you're going to get a lot of criticism. You're going to get a lot of hate. And then people are like, oh, okay, I see what he's saying now. You've talked about Cade Cunningham for so long now. And now everyone understands how good he is. But I'm going to ask you this now. How good is Cade Cunningham actually? And what player does he remind you of? Because you've told me this before.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with what Cade Cunningham brings to the table. I've been fortunate enough to watch him in high school because I live not too far from Mount Verde. So I'm able to get to the games and just kind of see what kind of kid he is on and off the court. He's a fantastic kid, first and foremost. And Cade carries this aura, this great aura around him that a lot of people don't have. And that's one thing that has always stood out to me about Cade is the way he carries himself. He has that magnetism about him that we talk about. He's a terrific player, terrific leader, and the world is starting to see his impact on the game that goes far beyond the stat sheet. The player that Cade Cunningham reminds me of is Grant Hill. I believe Grant Hill's one of my favorite players to ever play the game, not just because of the statistical things that Grant produced, but how he carried himself on and off the floor, a true professional, a fantastic aura, the magnetism that he built within the locker room, even going into later on in his career with those Phoenix teams and so forth. So the position that Cade is for me is a dual forward, and that's what I believe that Cade Cunningham is a kind of the Grant Hill is the forefather, the guy that kind of gave the dual forward fingerprints, and now you're starting to see that position evolve with a player like Cade Cunningham.
Okay, so now before we transition into the dual forward, and your position dictionary is just unbelievable. Let me ask you this. So before the draft, we obviously say we covered it on SUV TV. We like to give flowers. That's what we do. And like really shed light on the positives in their game. But a lot of people are going to tear down and break down and pick apart. And this is why they're not this and this is why they're not that. So let me ask you this now, before all that criticism gets underway from other people, is what is his impact going to be in the league? Is it going to be an immediate impact? Can you foresee that happening, or is it going to take some development? What do you foresee his impact being as soon as he enters the league?
I think it all depends on the team that drafts him first. I mean, you have
Right.
to look at what the team needs. If he goes to the Washington Wizards, who I believe the Wizards may get the number one pick, I believe they take Cade Cunningham with the number one pick. And from then on, I believe if he goes to Washington, he will have that dual forward type of role where he's initiating offense, making plays for himself, making plays for others. You look at a team like OKC, they have the draft picks to kind of move up in the draft. You pair him with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Again, he's still going to play in that dual forward type of position. So this is a kid that has been kind of built to have an impact the way he plays. Again, when you watch other evaluators or things like that, I understand trying to break down his game and find weaknesses and stuff like that, but you can find weaknesses in LeBron James' game. Like,
Yeah.
no such thing as a perfect basketball player. There's only opinion. So you're going to see things that maybe he can work on that he may never get better at, but that still doesn't take away his greatness and what he's going to bring to the table for an NBA franchise.
That's a great point. All right, so now this is my favorite part. Let's dive into your position dictionary. You first showed me this. I was so impressed. I watched it twice, and then I sent you that text message.
Yeah.
101 podcast. I really suggest everyone that's listening to this podcast or watching this interview to please go check it out. I truly believe you've changed the game, and I've already believed you've done that. And now it's just icing on the cake at this point. You're just showing off because you broke it down to the point where it makes so much sense. It really reminds me of the iPhone. You're giving a product to people that I don't think they understood that they needed until now. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense. So you broke it down to TG, PG, HG, CG. Then you have your shooting guard, your small forward, your DF, which is the dual forward, the SB, the stretch big, the hybrid post, the power forward, the center, the point center. And the way you did it answered all the questions for me. Your podcast, you answered everything. So like I have no questions for you as far as understanding it, but for people who've never listened to it yet and they'll check it out after this, why did you do it? And we'll dive in depth specifically on the positions, but why did you do this and what do you feel it does for the game of basketball moving forward?
Well, I think historically when you look at the game of basketball, we've made a mistake in general of using 5 positions to define 25 different styles. And I believe that it's caused more harm than good over the years. I mean, it's those 5 slots: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. Those 5 slots have ruined some guys' careers because certain guys didn't fit in either of those 5 slots.
Right.
So what the game has done over the years is put limitations on the skill sets of basketball players. And I don't think that's fair to the game. We've watched evolution. And episode 2 for my 101 podcast is called The Evolution, will be televised. Because when you look at things around you, everything else has evolved. Cars have evolved. Cell phones have evolved. TVs have evolved. Media has evolved. How come the terminology of basketball hasn't evolved? So the question that I have for you, since you don't have a question for me, is this is how I sum up the position dictionary for anybody who has a question about it. If you sit inside of a 2020 Mercedes-Benz and then sit inside of a 1980s Mercedes-Benz, what will be the difference?
The evolution.
The evolution of the car.
The evolution of the car, the mechanics, how we view it, how we see it, what's everything.
So when you step into the basketball realm of 2020 and you step into the basketball realm of 1980, what's the difference?
It's evolution, the way it's changed, man. Oof. Ooh, that's deep. That's deep. And now, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense on so many levels because I remember texting you and I'm watching. And now this is no slight to any player. It's like, okay, if you play a certain way, that's perfectly fine. But you can't tell me Steph Curry and Ricky Rubio play the game the same way, but yet they're positioned at point guard. And I'm like, that's just not the case. If you watch them play, they just clearly don't play the same type of basketball. You look at Draymond Green and LaMarcus Aldridge, they're not playing the same game of basketball, but they're both listed as the power forward position. And I'm like, so once I saw your podcast and I saw the way you broke it down, it made so much sense. And another element that you add to it is what this has done for the game of basketball by not evolving. To your point, it's limited guys like Draymond Green initially, what you said. It's like, oh, well, he's undersized and he doesn't do this and this like a power forward does.
Yes.
But if you use your positional dictionary, you're actually like, oh, that's because he's not that. He's this. And it makes so much sense. And one thing that I really like about your podcast, and when you broke it down, is you took NBA rosters and you put what their lineup should actually be. And I really hope we start to see that more. And I'm going to go and say this. I think 2K Sports needs to contact you and they need to hire you because they need to add this positional dictionary to their game. It would add another element, not only to their starting lineups, but the My Career mode. If you play My Career, they always talk about a sharpshooting slasher or a two-way defensive stopper. But if they add this positional dictionary to that, that would add another layer to 2K Sports.
I definitely can see that, and I would be elated to really insert the position dictionary with 2K. And I think you're spot on. When you play My Player on 2K, they need to have the slotted positions, and I think the video game world, the basketball world would totally embrace something like that because, again, it's something that's much needed and it needs to take form. And I believe it just brings a new excitement to the game of basketball and obviously the video game world. Like I could only imagine shaping my player to be a dual forward. Like I would love to try to shape this dual forward position or shape the point center or the hybrid guard. I think people would absolutely love that if 2K would add my positions dictionary to their game.
Absolutely. Because what they do now is it's like a chart. It's a pie chart. And if you're a two-way sharpshooter, it shows you your strengths and it shows you your weaknesses, but you have to play around with the pie chart in order to get that prototype.
Yeah.
But if initially you had your positional rankings right there, hey, I want to be a dual forward. And so, bam, and you go right to a dual forward. You know exactly who you're trying to play like. You know exactly who your My Player is trying to play like.
Oh.
It brings your imagination to life. It really does.
Yeah. I hope. Hey, 2K, I'm available.
2K, you need to hire my guy, Rashad Phillips. Reach out to him. Check out the podcast. I promise you will not be disappointed. One of the other things I want to transition into is somebody that when you and I first got in contact, I remember being blown away by your thoughts on Steph Curry. And I'm like, man, I love Steph Curry. But the way you broke down Steph Curry to me with the basketball checklist, and you're like, all right, dribbling, passing, shooting, finishing, leadership. I'm like, okay, he does check all those boxes. His impact, I think, is undeniable at this point. I think everyone understands his impact. Now, you may criticize what does he do this year,
right.
Finals MVPs, but no one's criticizing his impact on the game.
Right.
But you've listed him as a HG.
Yeah.
As a hybrid. So my question to you would be this: how many players can truly play that position, and how do you know when you have an HG on your hands?
It's a great question. The reason that term kind of took shape because you look at a guy like a Steph Curry who has been criticized unfairly because as a basketball community, we have him slotted at a position that he doesn't play. But we've held him to the standards of that position that he doesn't play. So we're like, why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? Because that's what point guards do. And that's not what Steph Curry is. So the hybrid guard is a player that has a unique play style and isn't the greatest facilitator, but can score the ball and initiate offense. Being a great facilitator and initiating offense are two separate things. Steph Curry can initiate offense, but he doesn't facilitate offense.
Right.
That's what separates a hybrid guard from a point guard. Hybrids play the game in a unique fashion. They're great scorers, they're great initiators, and they impact the game sometimes without facilitating the game.
Right.
That's the difference. So that's when you know you have a hybrid guard on your hands, when they're great at initiating offense and they have a unique play style and they move the court a different way. And Steph Curry epitomizes what that is.
Now, would you say the hybrid guard, or I remember you also talked about the dual forward position, not that these other positions, the stretch bigs and the point centers, not that they don't have value in any way, but I'm saying as far as just a game changer, would you say the hybrid guard and the dual forward are your two biggest game changing positions?
Yes, the dual forward is probably the most dangerous position, but it can't be played by everyone.
Can't.
It's a really unique position. LeBron James, the Grant Hills, Giannis, Luka, like those are guys it's a rare position. So the questions that I've been asked, and I want to say it on your show, is that you don't have to ignore the traditional five positions. A lot of people are just trying to move guys around because it looks cool. For an example, I've gotten questions, well, is Kevin Durant this or that? No, Kevin Durant's a small forward. Like, the new positions doesn't mean that everybody gets a new definition.
Right.
The definitions fit the player that actually fits that slot.
Right.
So certain players stick under the traditional term, like a Chris Paul. Chris Paul is a point guard.
Point guard.
He stays there. He doesn't have to move because it looks cool. Kevin Durant is a small forward. He's maybe the greatest small forward ever one day, but dual forward, like LeBron, Larry Bird's a dual forward, Luka Doncic, Giannis, that position garnishes a lot of stats. It's a gaudy position. It has a lot of responsibility and is very hard to do because there's a lot on your shoulders.
Right.
So I would give the dual forward as the most prestigious position, but also the most difficult.
For sure.
Well,
for sure. Yeah, you have a lot more responsibility, so it's a greater risk for a greater reward. I definitely, when I'm going through your positions, the best way to describe it is checking out your podcast, because like I said, your podcast, not only do you define every position, you explain why, you do the why, what, how, when, and it's just the best way to break it down. So with you, I really wanted to talk about the impact your positional dictionary had on the game, and really the game of basketball going forward. But my last Steph Curry question for you before I transition to this next thing is, I feel like when we look at Steph Curry, we look at him as a book that's already written. It's like, okay, he's changed the game, finals MVPs, champion, the 73-9 team. But I feel like there's still so much to be written by him. It's like, for example, Chris Paul. We look at a Hall of Famer, and then I feel what he did in OKC and what he's doing in Phoenix adds another chapter to his game. It's like, man, to me, that's so impressive that he can go to all these different locations and organizations that weren't really prestigious before him. And now you're looking at a 2 seed in the West. You're looking at a team that took Houston to 7 games.
Yeah.
So for you, how much do you think is still left to be written with Steph Curry? Because I really feel like there is still more to be written. Maybe not change the game as far as the 3-point shot. That's just something that only he has been able to do. But how much is there still left for Steph Curry to achieve and do?
I think that there's still more left. But the problem with Steph Curry that is social media has gotten bored with his greatness. And a lot of times the player suffers because we live in a what have you done for me lately type of world.
Mm-hmm.
So the general public tends to try to erase or put what Steph Curry has accomplished on the back burner and say, what have you done lately? And he suffers from that, and it's not his fault. Personally, I think there's more left for him because he's such a great player. But as far as Hall of Fame career and being an iconic figure, I don't think there's much more that he can do.
Right.
But from a basketball standpoint, I'm sure he still wants to win. I believe he has his own personal goals that he want to reach. But he will always be looked at as a player that has always played with great teams. And that's a great thing, and that's a bad thing. Because with society, as far as a basketball community, what we've done, which is wrong, is we move the goalposts depending on who's the kicker. And when Steph Curry's up to kick, everybody moves his goalposts. And I think that's unfair.
Right. No, that's a fantastic way to look at it. And to your point, yeah, he's already solidified himself as a Hall of Famer and the way he's changed the game. But yeah, as far as a basketball perspective, I still just feel he can do so much. And I mean, he had a career high this season already, 62 points. He's clearly still balling. But yeah, people, I think it's a fatigue. It's greatness fatigue. We see it with Michael Jordan, and we've seen it with LeBron, and now we're seeing it with Steph Curry. So this next thing that I'm about to implement with you is a little different. So I made it the follow-unfollow trend. And because right now everything is social media driven, Twitter, you look at Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, everything is just trendy. And is it, like you said, what have you done for me lately? So I'm going to run about 7 things past you. And you just simply have to say if you're going to follow or unfollow the trend. Now, if you unfollow the trend, it doesn't mean you're a hater of it. You're just not following that trend.
Yeah.
Okay. So first one I'm going to put to you is the new Positional, the guide. We're going to start off easier and it gets a little bit harder.
All
right. So follow or unfollow Rashad's new position guide.
Follow.
Okay. Hawks, Mavs, 2
Follow.
teams of the future.
Follow.
NBA will be postponed.
Follow.
Kyrie Irving will retire a little early.
Follow.
LaMelo Ball will be an all-star at some point in his career.
Follow.
Harden will be out of Houston this season.
Unfollow.
Ooh. Bradley Beal will be out of Washington this season.
Follow.
Okay. And then my last one, I didn't know if I should throw it in there or not, but I guess we'll do it. 8. The process is here, or is the process still going to be leaving?
The process is here.
Okay. All right. So you believe Doc Rivers and management have kind of figured out what works? Because Philly's clicking right now.
They are. Ben Simmons still doesn't look comfortable.
Right.
He doesn't look comfortable. Watch the games. This is not my opinion. Go watch Philadelphia. Ben Simmons doesn't look comfortable, but Joel Embiid looks very comfortable.
Yeah, he's clicking. He just scored like 40 and 15 the other night, overtime, pulling up. It's just different. And to your point, you can't tell me Embiid and Jokic play the same position.
That's what I'm saying. Jokic is a point center, and Embiid is a center.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to ask this last thing for you. Trae Young, the Atlanta Hawks, every time I have you on, I have to have an update with you.
Yeah.
Because you were the first to find the UFO. You were the first to find Trae Young. As far as a point guard looking at another point guard, evaluating his game, evaluating the team, is he on track to be doing what you thought he was going to be doing at this point in his career and the Atlanta Hawks?
Yes, I think Trae Young is definitely on track. He started out the season really hot. People started to complain because he was drawing fouls, which I thought was strange. they had a little bit of they hit a little bit of a speed bump, but that's the NBA. They lost a couple games, a couple guys were unhappy, but that happens in professional sports. But again, I just believe that the Atlanta Hawks are destined to be in the finals in the next 2 to 3 years. I think they have the makeup. They have the bodies. They aren't healthy yet. They still haven't played with their full roster because they have guys hurt. Rondo is hurt. Gallo is hurt. Bogdanovich is hurt. The rookie Okongwu, they haven't played him yet. That's 4 guys that are rotation guys that haven't even played. So I believe the Atlanta Hawks are trending up. Buy a ton of stock and sleep well.
Sleep well. Rashad Phillips, thank you so much for your time. Every time I'm so grateful for it. I love picking your brain and bugging you as often as I can. Where can people check you out? Social media, Instagram, Twitter, your new podcast, all the above.
Yep. RP3 Natural. You can find me on Twitter. You can subscribe to my new podcast, One of One. It's on Apple, Spotify, and all those platforms. You can find that. Episode 2 will be on its way in a few weeks. The evolution will be televised. I'll be taking a deeper dive into my new positions. And I'll be explaining a little bit more in detail in different shades of each position. You can find me on Instagram as well, Rashad Phillips 2319. I'm always there to engage and really talk the purity of the game.
Thank you very much, Rashad. I always I'm so grateful for everything you do. I learn from you every time I talk to you, and I know this is going to be an even bigger year than last year. So we'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. Talk soon.